Welcome to Dare to Lead, a Hallian podcast, the show that empowers you to navigate leadership, career, and business in today's dynamic landscape. I'm your host, Stuart Fry, CEO at Hallian. Today, we're joined by Peter Komolafe, best-selling author, award-winning content creator, financial expert, and TV presenter. With 18 years in financial services, he's held key roles in retail, corporate banking, and wealth management at top institutions like NatWest, RBS, MetLife, and Investec. Now, through Conversation of Money, he's helping thousands make smarter financial decisions. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, Peter. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. How's your experience in Dubai so far? Because you're fairly new to the region.
Fairly new to actually brand new to the region, because I only made the permanent move in December. But we've been coming here for 10 years, so we've got friends and people that we've met here. We feel kind of like we kind of know it, but at the same time we don't. So it's definitely a transition over, but it's been good so far.
Yeah,
acclimatized quite well. Kind of got used to kind of like the cycle here. Very fast paced. That's definitely what I've noticed, and it's a lot quicker than I thought it was going to be.
And you've got summer number one on the way.
Yes, but I was here August last year, so I kind of already have an idea of how hot it basically gets. But I went home for some respite and left the missus here. Being here for the full kind of like summer is going to be interesting.
Yeah, air conditioning to air conditioning to air conditioning.
Absolutely.
That's the way to go.
Yeah,
That's the way to go. So look, just to kick things off, do you want to let our viewers know, what were you like as a child growing up?
Well, as a child, I was fostered, essentially. So I think I was a good kid. I was a little stubborn. I was definitely stubborn. I got told that multiple times. But generally speaking, I think I was a good kid. People would say that I was very kind of like, I stayed within my tracks, quite obedient, quite polite. And I think that's important because I bring that through to my adulthood. And it kind of shapes the way I kind of interact with people and just my general sense of how the world is, really, to be honest. But as a kid, I did pretty well in school as well. I was quite bright, which was really, really good. Always carried a pen with me for some reason. I have no idea why. And maybe that's why I ended up doing what I do now. But I had a very, very creative, active mind when I was much, much younger.
Did you have a role model growing up? Someone at school or someone famous?
Michael Jackson.
Okay.
Michael Jackson growing up, for sure. He was kind of like, that was the back in the day of like Thriller.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you miss that?
Bad.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great song.
Absolutely.
Great song.
Yeah.
Do you know any of his dance moves?
I used to. I was very, very good at the
moonwalk. Ask you
moonwalk.
to do.
I was so good at the moonwalk. I was very, very good at that. That was a long time ago, though.
So when you were growing up, were there any kind of key moments that led to you leading to your career trajectory?
Yes. There were two. So I've written a book in the UK back in 2023, and it's about money and finances. I work in financial services now. That's my business. And there were two instances in the book that I recount, which at the time, oblivious, just observations as a kid.
Yeah.
But those were pivotal moments in terms of what I kind of do now. Like I said, I was fostered. So my parents are Nigerian. And back in the 70s, you had a lot of Nigerians move to the UK to work, to study. And it was very, very common back then for parents to kind of have kids. They'll put an ad in the paper and then ask families to apply to look after their children. And back then, there was no safeguarding, no nothing. It was, unheard of to be done now, but very, very common practice. So I was put into foster care when I was 3 months, all the way up until I was 8 years old. So a family in East Sussex, Hastings, looked after me for that period of time. I'd see my parents once a year-ish during that period of time. But there were two instances that kind of shaped my trajectory into financial services as I see it now in retrospect. And the first one was kind of just simple dinner observations. My mate next door, Glenn, his mum was an amazing cook.
Okay.
His dinners were just phenomenal. Gordon Ramsay was in that kitchen. She might as well have been the early Nigella Lawson. But amazing cook. And I remember, always envying his dinners because we would have, beans on toast for dinner and all that kind of stuff. And subconsciously as a kid, I didn't know it then, but it kind of set this idea that Glenn can afford really nice dinners, we can't. And that led to a scarcity mindset much, much later on, which is something that I talk a lot about now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. I remember I got brought up in a little village just in East Sussex as well. And I remember exactly the same thing. I had a Scottish friend called Scott, and I was obsessed about going around his house for dinner because he had one of these shakers that had salt and vinegar flavouring. And I just thought it was the best thing ever. So I used to go around all the time and just try to use his shaker of salt and vinegar.
Yeah.
Talking about food, you've been here 6 months, best restaurants?
You know what? I don't think we've actually explored that many restaurants per se. I love Thai food. So I've not yet found a really, really good Thai place. But then again, we've found a lot of places with like really good kind of like sushi.
Okay.
So many different cuisines here.
Have
Really,
you tried
really good.
pad thai?
Pad Thai is not my favorite. I like Pad Kapow.
No, the restaurant pad thai.
Pad Thai.
Yes.
Oh, right. No, we haven't, no.
Okay, so if you go to Souk Madnat, you can get a boat, one of the little arbour boats, and it takes you around all the waterways to this restaurant called Pad Thai.
Okay.
Absolutely fantastic.
Right, I'll
Really
definitely
good.
check that out.
They've got like traditional dancing and all those kind of
Okay.
things there. So it's really, really, really good. So, yeah, obviously you've gone from your education, started your work in finance, you've written a book. What skills have you developed that have led you into being able to lead people within the financial sector?
Really good question. I think through my career, I've been in so many different roles. I've been in retail banking, corporate banking, wealth management. And I think for what I do specifically now, I mean, in retail banking, I think it was all about fundamentally understanding what people want and their needs are. Within finances, though, it's very interesting because a lot of the time there is a knowledge gap. So people don't necessarily know exactly what they need at the point unless there's a problem.
Yeah.
So understanding that and having appreciation for where people are. I'm a firm believer in meeting people where they are, especially when it comes to what I do, because that's crucially important. So retail banking, that was kind of the big kind of like learning. In corporate, it was more about businesses and what the business owners want to achieve. Personally, from a business point of view and also from a personal point of view, because those two things are connected.
Yeah.
And then in wealth management, it was very much about the personal goals for investment purposes. And I think if you think about what I've learned from a leader's point of view or leading people, it is having a clear understanding and trying to help people understand what it is that they actually need and listening to people. That's the biggest thing, listening to people and really understanding where they're coming from and how you fit into the picture.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that people face now is, I guess, financial literacy.
Yeah.
Because you've got loads of different platforms where people can invest, and you've got these cryptocurrencies that people go, oh, is this the next Bitcoin I'm going to put my life savings in, and then 6 months later it disappears.
Yeah.
How do you juggle that with individuals to make sure that they're making the kind of right decisions rather than just going with the flow of what's in the news or what's the latest trends?
It's difficult.
Yeah.
It is so difficult because I think my observation over the past 5 years of creating content online is that people want certain things. So, for example, when they search for things or if they get into the crypto kind of like content stream, it's simply because they want to make money.
Yeah.
And the world for the past 4 years has been kind of telling us that you need to earn more money in order for you to be able to survive, particularly in places like the UK, for example, where interest rates have increased quite significantly. We saw mortgage rates increase, which means that the average mortgage now is £300, £400 more expensive than it was 5 years ago. You had energy costs go up. You had all of these things. So people are looking for content that can help them make more money. And oftentimes that need to make more money that outweighs a lot of the common sense that sits behind this thing might sound too good to be true, and there are inherent risks with you doing this thing. And so the biggest challenge is trying to get people to take a step back to realize, okay, look, you could do really, really well here, but what does the track record kind of tell us?
Yeah.
The track record tells us there are lots of scams. There are lots of instances where people lose money because they've not fully understood what they're going into. And that in itself can be a losing battle sometimes because, unfortunately, you cannot make good financial decisions when there's a burden or a need that you need to meet. It means that logical thought goes out the window.
Yeah.
You're not thinking rationally. You're thinking about a solution to a problem which is pressing. And so for me, trying to get people to take a step back can be very, very difficult. But once you do that and you're able to kind of really delve into, look, what's the situation? What do you want to achieve? Why is this pressing? Typically speaking, in almost 100% of the cases where there is a need, there are other things that need to be fixed first before this crypto thing is the savior to come and, fix everything.
Yeah.
So it's trying to delve a little bit deeper into that and understanding the people again, and listening and trying to meet them where they're at that point in time.
Yeah, understanding the why. Understanding the why to then lead you to the point.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've seen over the last 16 years of being here is the whole wealth management, financial services, everything is becoming a lot more. There's a lot more regulations around it.
Yes.
The kind of cowboys of the past are now being pulled in line.
Yeah.
I think that's something that's going to continue, and I think regulations will probably get a bit harder here. Do you see that affecting the market? Do you see that affecting the kind of products people will get access to?
I hope so. I really, really do. I mean, I think I've been offered jobs to work here in the past. And when I looked at it all those years ago, I was like, absolutely not. I fundamentally have a problem with selling someone a commission-based product that I know is not going to serve them well, but is going to line my pocket. I can't do that. And for me, it's one of those instances where regulation prevents that type of stuff happening. So as more regulation is introduced and regulation is tightened, I would hope that better products will come to market. And with better products coming to market, you have that competition, which generally means that everybody gets better, pulls down prices, and it means that people have to practice their profession properly and adhere to the regulation that's around them. So I hope it does happen. I really, really do.
Yeah, I guess with more high net worth individuals here as well, the knowledge base and literacy they have on financial products is probably, well, hopefully a bit better. That's why they're high net worth individuals. So
you say that, but actually that's not necessarily true 100% of the time. My experience is that high net worth individuals, they know how to make money. But unfortunately, the what to do with money isn't always present 100% of the time. So you have a lot of money coming in, but how do you allocate it? And I've seen so many instances where they get pulled into investment products that, to be honest, if you were to sit down properly and think about, okay, yes, you're making a lot of money. What is your trajectory? What are your plans? What are your aspirations for your family? When do you want to kind of like, you've got to might have a business that you want to sell. What does that look like? What's that long-term plan? A lot of the time, they don't necessarily have something in place that is suited to that long-term vision. Because I feel like in the profession, sometimes even financial advisors find it intimidating speaking to someone who's high net worth, right? Because the assumption is there that you probably know this already, but unfortunately, some people just don't.
Yeah, we had a guy called Tristan Ramos on the show previously, and he talked sort of about philanthropy and how he wants to not necessarily spend his money, but actually start using it for good causes. He sits on the board of Greenpeace, for example. He's really into that kind of space. Do you think that that's a route that a lot of people are going down? That it seems that more people now are giving money away.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you think about the world as it currently is, and we're seeing this in the Western world more than anything else, the wealth divide is so big now. Like so big. And I don't personally think that you can vilify people who make a lot of money through their own endeavors and their own business ventures, because I think it's one of those things that at the end, it does compound. If you create a business or a product that solves a problem for people and people actually use it and it does a good job, it's a natural byproduct that you're going to make a lot of money off it. But what happens is, because society is divided and there's such an accumulation of wealth at the top end, it's nice to see that people at the top end are giving money away. So I think it's definitely something we're going to see more of. In the planning phase to it, though, and again, going back to, are there conversations being had around what's the best way for you to do this? Because you could go and give, $100 million to a foundation or stuff, but is it really going to be used for the purpose that you intend it to? So there are lots of like checks and balances to ensure that you're doing something that aligns with your objective, but actually is being used tangibly. And in the UK, we would talk about, setting up, there's things that you can do via charities. You can set up your own charity. So it's what's the right avenue for you? But it's nice to see that, the wealth at the top end through philanthropy, I keep struggling with that word, can be used to kind of help people who are, suffering at that divide.
Yeah, great. I suffer with the word pivotal. And Jess, who runs our podcast for us, she always puts in the script. So I say, talk about a pivotal moment in your career. One of the things, especially in Dubai, a brand is so important, especially nowadays. People are using social channels to research, who they want to invest in. We've seen it that some of our recruiters in our business, their Instagram, for example, will be very, very personal stuff. It'll be them being out partying and those kind of things. And a lot of candidates now that we speak to research a recruiter that they're working with. So having a personal brand is so important. Your background, what you've done, you're a TV celebrity, talked about complex financial investments on different platforms. How are you going to continue to build your brand out here and promote your brand out here?
I appreciate the TV celebrity, but I don't actually feel like that at all. I mean, that was never the intention. I think personal brand is important because I think for when I started this in 2020, it was simply just an idea. It was like, okay, so throughout my career, there's a lot of stuff that I learned on the job that I was like, okay, if I knew this when I was 18, 19 years old, I probably would have made better financial decisions. It would have saved me a lot of angst when it comes to the debt that I struggled with for 10 to 15 years. So I would have been better off. So for me, I was just like, okay, cool. So if I can start this thing and just share what I've learned through my career in a easy to understand manner, just speaking to a mate, then hopefully there's a little bit of traction there. And I was very, very reluctant to put my face to camera initially. But my mate said to me, you should actually put your face to camera because you don't look like a typical financial advisor. So people will gravitate towards you because you're different, you look different, you sound different, and your experiences are very, very different. And so that was kind of like the beginning of like building the personal brand. And for everything that's happened from the TV to the book, that's all come about because I'm very, very honest and I share my own mistakes. I would say like it's completely normal. So I think personal brand is important. Out here, I'm still relatively new here, to be honest. So I want to be able to leverage some of the things that I've done in the UK. I don't really know that it has any weight, to be honest. I think wherever you go in whatever market, yes, you have a bit of a reputation that you bring along with you, but ultimately you have to, nothing's given. So you have to prove your worth. And so working with people and just networking and getting to know people, getting to know how the system works here, that's how I plan to kind of build and extend, I won't say build, but extend my personal brand over here. I think there's a lot of content online. I've got over 600 videos, maybe even 800 now videos, so people can just watch me. If you Google me, there's TV stuff there, so people can get a good sense of me. But I think that, a personal brand is kind of built personally, one-on-one with people in groups, and that's what I look forward to doing, really.
I think it's even harder now because you look at the amount of mediums that people build their brand on. You've got YouTube, you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook, you've got TikTok. You've got all these different things.
It's like being pulled in so many different directions. I focused on two. Okay. I focused on YouTube being the main thing, Instagram. For what I do, short form content isn't necessarily the best form of content. So I talk about financial topics. So with that, because there is an education gap, you need to be able to create videos that explain things in an easy way. You can't do that in 60 seconds. Before I jumped on YouTube in 2020, I was doing 60-second videos every single year on Instagram for a year, like literally. This is before short form content even became a thing. But I quickly realized that you need to go more long form. And the benefit of long form is that you get to actually build trust. And it's the perfect way to build your personal brand because you can't fake it on camera. Well, you can. You can fake it on camera, but you're going to get found out if you're not being genuine, right? So for me, long form has been the main conduit, and that has been primarily YouTube with maybe some other short form stuff, interactive stuff on Instagram. And I've stuck to those two purposely because those are the ones that I understand. Later on today, I'm doing a TikTok video where I'm going to have 10 employees stand behind me and say their name and I've got to guess who they are. I'm going to be the worst person at this. I'm going to be absolutely terrible because I'm
I'm terrible at all those kind of things. And we've got about 100 people working in our office. And
good luck with that.
Yeah, when we first started the Middle East business, you get to go around and say hello to everyone every single morning, and you'd be close to everyone. Now you can't go around and say hello to 100 people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have these people standing behind me going, "Hello, Stuart." I'm going,
Are you good at recognizing faces, names?
Faces.
I'm always good with faces rather than names.
Yeah. No, much better at faces. What would you say your kind of proudest career achievement is? Because you've written a book, you've been on TV, you've been on my podcast. Well, apart from today, so I won't take offence. Proudest career achievement?
A really good question. There were two things that jumped to my head immediately. The first one is being on Lorraine Kelly's show. And that's not really an achievement. I don't see that as an achievement because it was a byproduct of me doing a TV show.
Yeah.
But I grew up watching Lorraine, and to be there, like to get the phone call and be like, "Oh, do you want to be on Lorraine Kelly in the morning?" I'm like, "Of course I do," and then rocking up and then actually sitting there and she's there, and it's like in my head, I'm going crazy. Like, this is Lorraine Kelly. And she was lovely. And she goes, "Come back next week." So I ended up doing like 4 shows with her. But I think the actual achievement, because I assign achievements to work being done, I would put that down to my book.
Yeah.
When I started in 2020, it was always one of those situations where I was like, if I could write a book and actually be a published author, not self-published, a published author, so a publishing house puts money behind me, that would be a dream come true. And the book happened with HarperCollins, which is the second largest book publisher in the world. So that's the one that sticks out to me. And for me, I wanted to do a physical book because I got offered to do just an audio only with one of the big audio outlets. And they offered a lot of money. And I was like, if it was just about the money, this is the way that I would go. But I wanted something physical that it doesn't matter what happens. My book is always physically there to be handed to your kids or to whoever, your cousin. So that for me is probably the biggest achievement.
How do you start writing a book?
Mate, don't even ask. Trust me. Listen, my timeline got condensed so much because of things happening that I had to write the book in 3.5 weeks over a Christmas period. So that's 60,000 words. Luckily for me, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to write. So I already had the formula in my head. So my editor was just like, you just need to get it out. But you know the topic so well that it will just flow. It was part narration, then review, then cut down, and then that fine tweak, polishing, that kind of approach. It was a lot of hard work. It was very, very stressful. But at the same time, quite enjoyable when you see the physical book and it's there.
Yeah, I think the narration bit is important to it because for me in my kind of day to day, so my morning routine is I'm up at 5 o'clock. I go for a 5 or 6 kilometre walk, and then I'll train. And in that 5 to 6 kilometre walk, I probably spend 45% of that time, 50% of that time sending myself messages. Because I just find my brain is just clear. Yeah, my brain's clear. I'm right today. We should do that. We should do this. Let's look at doing this as a business. Here's an idea, and I'm just walking around Alpha Jan talking to myself. I'm sure other walkers just look at me going like, well, "What is he on about?" But I find that's really good just to kind of clear your head and get things out and then write it. Yeah,
you're able to get ideas out in the purest form, and then you can refine it. Because one of the things that I realized is and during the process of actually writing the book, I found out that I'm also mildly dyslexic.
Right.
Through the record the audio book, and my brain it just skips. I know what I wrote, so read what's on the paper. My brain just skips.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like narration helped me get the ideas out in the purest form, and how you think is not necessarily how you would read. How you speak isn't necessarily how you would read, and it's just about trying to get that into a mold that fits from a literal point of view.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you balance out that work personal life? Because writing a book 3.5 weeks over Christmas, that obviously impacts your personal life.
Yeah.
How do you find that right balance between the two, or haven't you found the balance yet?
I've got better since I've moved here, but I mean, I'm self-employed. I run my own business, right? I run my own enterprise. So immediately right there are pressures. You work according to the workload and according to demands that you have around you. So I don't think I've fixed that necessarily. I've been better since I moved here. I always try to ensure that, yes, we have some quality time kind of set aside. But it's something I'm still working on right now, to be honest. A lot of people say that work-life balance is not a thing. And to a certain extent, I can agree with that, because what exactly is the balance? You get to decide that, right? There will be times where you might not do as much, but times where you're really, really heavy on the workload. So if you looked at it over a period of time, what is balance? And I think for me, what I'm striving for is to kind of be able to say, over the course of a year, I spent X amount of time on projects, X amount of time doing this, but certainly allocating X amount of time for my own personal stuff outside of work in the business.
Yeah, it is hard, and you're exactly right. Everyone in every stage of their lives has peaks and troughs of being full on, business or full on personal. Like if you have a child or get married or go on honeymoon and these kind of things, you want to be able to be in that position to completely switch off. And likewise, if you're there doing annual budgets or those kind of things, you want to be able to fully focus on your work.
Are you ever really able to switch off though?
No,
I don't
not at all.
ever find that I am.
Not at all. I used to have a BlackBerry, and you used to have that red light that used to flash in the corner. And my now ex-wife used to say that was my mistress, because every time that flashed, I'd be like, I'm going to look at the phone. And it is difficult. It's difficult in the roles that we're in now, and the pressures that get put on our lives. It is very, very difficult to completely switch off.
Yeah. I always try to kind of think about, right, this, and maybe I'm weird, I'm a little bit of a workaholic, but I have times where I'm not busy. And I feel guilty for not being busy. And I'm like, I need to fill this time with something, so I am busy. And now I'm trying to kind of like take a step back and be like, okay, I'm not busy. Go do something else. Like back in the UK, because it rains so much and it's grey, you naturally want to fill your time with stuff. I think over here it's very, very different because the sun is out. So actually go for a walk. Go to the gym, go to the pool, do whatever you want to do. And I find myself falling into that side of it a little bit more now when I'm not as busy as I normally am. And it's nice just to kind of take a step back for an hour or two and just relax.
Have you tried micro-learning? I'm a massive fan of micro-learning.
That's taking small little bits,
absolutely,
10, 15 minutes and learn something,
So there's apps like Blinkist, for example. And what it does, it condenses a book down into 15 minutes. And for me, I'm terrible. If I'm bored and I'm scrolling, I'm Facebook or Instagram and just dumbing my brain down. But if I've got 15 minutes, I'll listen to, I don't know, the history of Genghis Khan, something like that. And you just, oh wow, it's really interesting stuff. But because it's only 15 minutes, it's easy to digest in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I've looked at Blinkist in the past. I haven't necessarily, I watch a lot of videos. So I find really 10, 15 minute videos online, because I'm on YouTube. I spend a lot of time on YouTube naturally because it's my research tool. And I find myself going down like rabbit holes of just like different topics all the time. That can be bad though, because it can be distracting sometimes, and I have to pull myself out of the rabbit hole and be like, listen, focus on what you're supposed to be doing.
So if you go back to an 18-year-old version of yourself, what's the one bit of advice you'd say?
Probably relax a little bit more. Things will work out. Like, I came back to this country when I was 18, literally. And my parents, I probably need to fill in the gaps here. So I was fostered between 3 months and 8 months, 3 months and 8 years old. When I was 8, my parents had gone back to Nigeria 3 years before, sent for me. So my uncle rocks up, my foster parents' house. He's coming to London for the 2-week yearly holiday. He's going to spend the 2 weeks with me. They put me on a plane. I went to Nigeria, supposedly for 2 weeks. I ended up spending 10 years out there. So during that 10-year period, my foster parents didn't know where I was. I learned 4 years ago that they found out I was in Nigeria through a friend of a friend of a friend. So bear in mind. So I got picked up. I was supposed to come back in 2 weeks. I didn't turn up. They thought I'd been kidnapped or I was dead. Like, no idea. They found out 3-4 weeks after that, oh, he's in Nigeria. And so 10 years, no communication with our foster parents at all, zero communication. Then my parents go, you're going back to the UK, give me 50 quid, go find your foster parents. And luckily, they lived at the same place after 10 years of me being absent. So when I was 18, I was I was wet behind the ears. I was 5'3", something like that. And just extremely naive.
Yeah.
And because of the way kind of like I was initially treated when I got back, I was very, very uptight and like really, really on guard with people. If I could go back, probably wouldn't say let your guards down and be naive. Well, maybe smarten up a little bit more, but definitely in the years after that where I was homeless, slept on the streets and was really, really difficult, I would have told myself just to kind of like maybe not be as uptight. Things will work out. And that's probably what I would say to myself. Things will work out. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's good advice to everyone, because the amount of pressure that people put on themselves, younger selves now, than when I was 18, I was probably, just happy-go-lucky, and, I probably did think everything's going to work out. I've always had that kind of attitude, but you see the amount of pressure that people put on themselves at a very, very young age. It's almost like 18, 19, you can't be young anymore.
That's social media. I mean, I wouldn't want to be 18, 19 now in the social media age. The pressure's everywhere. I mean, I spend a lot of time online, obviously, and I talk about money and finances and investing, and just some of the content out there of people like saying, if you're 21 or you're not earning 100 grand a month or some ridiculous amount, like you're a failure, or it makes you feel as though if you're not, because you're seeing all these other people that supposedly are doing so, you feel like, actually, what am I doing wrong? Like, is there something that I'm missing here? Yeah, I think that's a huge pressure for younger people now, and I wouldn't want to grow up in this social media age. And I think that kind of makes what I do a little bit more important, because at the end of the day, look, yes, you can make a lot of money on social media now. I never thought I'd have a business that would be social media based, but the pressure that comes with that is absolutely huge. And I think for younger people, they have to remember that you're on your own individual journey. You can take inspiration from these people, but unfortunately, you don't know whether their situation is right. You don't know whether it's true. It's so easy to go down to Souk Medina or downtown and post up with a picture next to a Lamborghini and pretend it's yours. To hire a Ferrari out here or a Lamborghini out here, you make out that it's yours. And this is what a lot of these guys have done. And they do that to put on the facade, to sell a course, to help people do what they're faking is their life. And there's a lot of there's a lot of mirrors and mirages around it that I think is unfortunate now. It'd
be so interesting to see what it's going to be like in 5 or 10 years and how it evolves, because the pressure people are under now is immense. But I also think the level of scrutiny on that pressure is getting bigger, and I think people are beginning to understand it. And I know quite a few people that work with children, psychiatrists who work with children. They said, actually, there's such a higher volume of children now wanting support that actually there's not enough psychiatrists and psychologists to deal with it.
It's a real shame. And that's the negative side of social media, and the fact that we are apparently seeing all of these perfect lives, and it's only natural as a human being, if you're seeing something that looks so perfect, to think, what's going on?
But it's the criticism as well. If you're when you go back to when we were at school, right? We're not too different in ages. There was no social media, no phones, those kind of things. And your criticism was someone saying something in the playground, or your mate telling you, or someone telling you to your face. Now you see that different posts, people are criticising it, and then 7 or 8 different people criticise on that post. They're not even maybe aware of the situation. They're just jumping on the bandwagon. And that cyberbullying is must be absolutely terrible for some of the children.
Absolutely. And I think this is where, again, negative side of social media, everyone has an opinion, and it's an open forum.
How do you deal with it?
I try to ignore it as much as possible. It's a little weird for me, because my main channel on YouTube, I don't ever get anyone. Well, there's one person in particular. He's been in my comment sections for 4 years, and he's the only one that I noticed. He will always try and give a jab or a jive where he can. Generally speaking, I just ignore it, because it's like, there's no merit to me giving you any juice in the comment section. You've taken the time to watch my video. You want to nitpick it, that's completely fine. And I'm not foolish enough to believe that everything that I say, people are going to agree with. And I think that's really, really important, especially for what I do. I'll have a view, I'll have an opinion. I try to make sure that it's fact-based a lot of the time. So there isn't really much that you can debate upon because it's fact-based. But, you can't just assume, or I at least don't assume that everything that I say, people are going to take for gospel. I think I said people don't take what I say for gospel. My channel is there just to help you get a basic understanding so you can do further research to decide what you want to do. I don't pay any mind, to be honest.
No. I think it's if people are given criticism and you can take something constructive from it, to respond back to it and say, thanks, I actually tried that, or those kind of things. But there's some people that just poke. And they poke because they're a competitor or they're jealous.
I find it quite funny sometimes. I had a message, the same guy actually, because I'm also doing a bit of a YouTube channel where I'm talking about my experience moving here, and he left this really nasty message. Your business is going to suffer. It's going to be a holiday for you, you tax dodger. And I went back with a really sarcastic kind of like comment, like, Lawrence, like, did someone spit in your coffee this morning? Are you okay?
Have you got a tax bill in today?
Right? But I find it amusing a lot of the time. But try not to pay attention to it.
Yeah. How would you describe your leadership style?
Leadership style, I believe that one of the key things with me is integrity and understanding people and listening to people and leading from there. So I think sometimes you do have to kind of like take charge, but I do believe that the best way that you can actually lead people is by understanding what they want and giving them the tools that they need to actually flourish. When I look back over my career, one of my best managers, which I actually mentioned in the book, that's what he did for me. He listened. He really, really he got me as a person. Like, he really understood me. He understood my background. He understood what my motivations were. And he used that as by the way, this is a great opportunity for you to be able to really achieve all of those personal things that you thought were never possible. Yeah. And that for me has always been one of the biggest lessons. Really care about the people that you're working with and inspire them to do the work themselves whilst giving them the tools to be able to do it, because the personal growth and the sense of achievement that you get from it is huge as an individual who is being led in that way. And his lasting impact on me is, if I could do that, I can pretty much do anything else. And the personal development and the skill set that you gain from that and the confidence is, you can't buy that with money.
Yeah. What do you think's next for you? Obviously, you're in Dubai, 5 months now. What's your next step? What's the next kind of 12 months look like for you?
Well, my main priority is building my network here at the moment. That's the most important thing. The UK business is still kind of ongoing, still creating content, still got clients to work with out there, but building my profile here is really, really important. Networking, getting to know people, and trying to introduce the coaching side of what I do here in the UAE. I feel like because it's a more money-oriented kind of environment here in the UAE. Someone showed me a stat the other day about overspend in Dubai. And the amount of people that overspend every single month is absolutely huge. And going back to this idea that most people, it would appear, make a lot of money here, tax-free, but still overspending, there's a gap there. And within the coaching services that I do, I focus on, and this is the first thing I mentioned in the book after my introduction. What's your why? What's the bigger plan? What are you working towards? Why are you actually here? Especially if you're an expat. What are you doing here? Yeah. What's the ultimate goal? Because I've seen so many reports, and we see this in the data as well, that people who come here to work as expats, if they go home, oftentimes have nothing to show for it. And that's a huge shame, particularly if you're earning large sums of money. So building the coaching business out here to help people structure their finances. And that isn't to say, don't enjoy the things that you enjoy. No, absolutely do that. But having some kind of system, some methodology around how you do all of that stuff, but still have something to show for it 5-10 years into the future, to actually build your wealth, actually create some financial stability and financial freedom for the future. And that's one of the main things that I'm looking to do here now. Yeah,
I think one of the challenges that I've seen in my time is access to funds becomes so easy here. Access to credit cards and loans and further loans and car loans.
Yeah.
And you see people driving, 400,000 dirham car, but they're earning, 25,000 dirhams a month. And you think, it's just not, well, it's great if that's what they want to do, because everyone has their own financial freedom.
Yeah.
But you look at that and just say, that's just a lifestyle choice. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, but the crazy thing about that is it's natural for everyone to do. I mean, I've definitely done it, and it's just a natural thing where if you earn more money, you spend what you earn. Lifestyle creep in that sense can be devastating, because when you really look back over it, and it's something that I had to do myself. So when I started working in Canary Wharf in 2012, and bearing in mind I don't have a university degree, and to work in Canary Wharf, when I naively moved back to London thinking I'll just get a job easy, it's not that easy. Especially in Canary Wharf back then, you need a university degree. It doesn't matter whether it was in a relevant topic, but the university degree evidenced that you could start something and finish something. So for me, in my background, I was like, okay, I don't have a university. I couldn't afford to go to university. It was just not on the cards for me. I would have loved to. But when I started earning money in Canary Wharf, you got to remember, like, I spent 10 years in Nigeria. We had no running water, no electricity. Like, to them being in a position where you're doing 120 grand a year, I'm thinking, wow, like, come on. And then to bolster all of that, all of my role models at the time were rappers. And the rappers are like, the watches, the chains, all the cars and all this kind of stuff. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm making good money now, so I want to go buy all of those things. It's a natural thing. And I talk a lot about behavioral psychology and the things that kind of like we learn when we're younger. So again, going back to the scarcity mindset, we didn't have enough money for decent dinners. So now I'm earning all of this money and I'm like, I can afford good dinners. I can afford those trainers that I never thought I would be able to afford. So I went off and spent it. And for a lot of people, that's a natural progression. Sometimes you have to get that out of your system. But the trouble becomes when you don't have the epiphany moment of, okay, what am I doing? And it was my manager who actually said to me, and again, the guy that I referenced earlier, goes, what are you doing? I would literally, in Canary Wharf, I would go downstairs and buy a suit for £1,000. I was the best dressed guy in the office because I could. And he goes, what are you doing? And I went, what do you mean? And he goes, you're doing well, but what are you doing? Like, what are you here for? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, look, so do you want to buy property? You've been homeless. Do you want to buy property at some point? You want to be a homeowner? And at that point, I never even thought about it. The thought of me being homeowner from being homeless was like, it's such a huge jump. It just didn't occur to me, strangely. Like, I could own my own home. And he goes, you're earning enough money to buy your own property. Like, what are you doing? And that was the moment where I was like, okay, wow. Maybe I need to rethink. And I think for a lot of people who come here earning really, really good money, but are, earning this amount, but buying a car that they can't really afford. I think there's an element of that to it. And you have to kind of key into what your goals and your objectives are. And it's hard for people to do because we're not naturally wired to do that as human beings, to think 10, 15 years in the future. But you start with small steps. So a lot of the time when I do coaching, I take people through a timeline exercise and say, what are the goals? Go 5 years. And then work backwards. What are the most important things? And that is a repeatable exercise that builds habits that get you thinking more long term. And I find it to be a really, really powerful exercise because it ties into intrinsic motivations. And intrinsic motivations is how you actually break people out of habits, financial habits, where you're spending too much, you're impulsive spending, you're buying a car that it's going to be a little bit tight, but it makes me look good. That short-term satisfaction for that long-term gain, that swap has to be framed in something and anchored in something. And I find that working on people's intrinsic motivations is the way to actually break that cycle and get them moving.
It always reverts back to the why.
Yes.
Why are you doing this? Why do you need this car? Why are you making this decision as a leader? What's the outcome? What's the eventual realization that you want to get from it? And that's where I think that, especially in the high-paced world that we live in now, people sometimes don't get the time and opportunity to ask themselves the why. They just have to do it.
Absolutely.
They're in the showroom, salesman goes, if you don't buy the car today, it's going to be more expensive tomorrow. Okay, I'll have it.
It's also understanding yourself as well. Like understanding what do you actually want out of life? You know, does the car really mean that much? Like if you asked me when I was 20 years old, I'd be like, yeah, dude, I need to have a Bentley GT Continental. I need to have a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. I've got no desire for one right now.
What do you drive?
Right now, I bought an MG7 here.
Okay, great.
Literally, very, very cheap.
Yeah.
I thought it will get me from A to B. Back home, I was in Teslas back home. I feel like cars themselves are just bad financial investments.
Yeah.
VAT immediately, you drive off the forecourt.
Yeah.
You've got running costs.
Yeah.
Like, for me, nah. I mean, if I got to the point where, you know, a few million in the bank or quite a few millions in the bank, then maybe it would be something in relation to your income and the assets that you have. I think that's completely fine.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, you know, financial understanding also comes into it. But if you're earning or your net worth is of X amount, you're driving a car that is half your net worth. I mean, it's absolutely insane at the end of the day. But I get where people feel like those things give them validation, especially depending on what you do for a living sometimes as well, because let's be honest, in business sometimes it does help if you rock up in a really, really nice car because of that impression, that first impression that you make, depending on the circles that you're trying to get into. But there's always a bigger fish.
Yeah. So how can any of our listeners and viewers get in touch with you?
Instagram is probably the best way because I'm very active on that in terms of messages. So it's Conversation of Money or my name, Peter Komolafe. One of those two will bring me up.
Great. Well, I think we'll have a little line going across the bottom so people can see it. So my final question before we wrap up, how do you dare to lead?
How do I dare to lead? I think it's all about inspiring people, understanding their motivations and giving them the tools to be able to take those steps themselves, empowering people. I think that's really the most important part of my leadership approach, especially for what I do now. Inspire people, understand what they want and give them the tools to be able to do it themselves.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on today. I've really enjoyed
it. I've
really enjoyed it. It's been great fun.
Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us for this inspired episode with Peter Komolafe. We delved into his journey from pivotal roles in banking and wealth management to becoming a leading voice in the financial education sector. Peter shared key lessons on financial literacy, leadership, and the power of digital media in shaping financial awareness. His insights on this and career growth were truly invaluable. Stay tuned for more impactful conversations and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn at Halion or visit www.halion.com to learn more.